Hey guys, this is Magic Man. I want to do a quick little video talking about Planetside 2 tutorial speedrun, kind of the state of the run so far, and my thoughts on it, and what I have found to work for me personally. This is pretty impromptu, but I want to preface the video by saying that this is mostly kind of a joke of a speedrun. Not really very Planetside to be doing a speedrun, especially because this is the only actually structured level in the entire game, if you will. But really the focus is not speedrunning it because it's Planetside, but more or less because it can be speedrun, if that makes sense. So while it is kind of a joke, it is kind of cool to see how far we can really take it. And it has certainly gotten more interesting the further we've looked into it and everything. So anyway, just kind of from the very beginning, all the runs are going to start by creating a new character, obviously to access the tutorial. As far as I'm aware, there is no way to actually access the tutorial outside of just starting a brand new character. As far as faction choice, I always do it NC because that's what I main, but the faction choice really does not matter. The only difference is really what you're going to be hearing from the voice lines, which I would recommend turning off if you are actually wanting to attempt it as a speedrun. Now some people have talked about before that playing on servers with higher ping can maybe benefit you, as far as lag can actually benefit you as far as your jump jets and stuff like that. Turbo can lag and maybe give you a better turbo. I'm not really interested in that. I'd rather just play on a better ping server and try to get a more clean run or thorough run. But that's something that could probably definitely be explored a little bit more. I haven't really looked into it much. So right now what we have set up is that every run will start with the first actual input that the user does when they load in. So early on, the run started by having, Shift W already pushed down before you've loaded in, because the game will start taking inputs in before you've actually started the tutorial. Same idea with how you can redeploy before the tutorial started. So I like to wait till everything's loaded in, because the lag can screw up your redeploy later on, as far as I've found. So anyway, from the very beginning, there's not really much fancy going on, just because most of the good stuff happens after you have chosen your loadout and everything. So really it's pretty simple, just starting forward and running through until you get to this doorway in here. And now you're very literally just running down a long hallway, cutting the corner if you possibly can. But the first kind of way to cut time that I have explored is skiing with your jump jets. Now, I don't even usually play light assault, but one thing that you can do when you're playing light assault and you've got your jets is that you can kind of slide across the ground by using your jets without actually really having friction with the ground. And when you do that while crouched, you kind of slide across the floor a little bit and slide over different obstacles and stuff like that. So instead of just running up, jumping, and dropping down, sometimes what I like to do is I'll jump and hold crouch and space and just kind of glide across the top. Whether or not that really saves time, I'm not really entirely sure, but what does definitely save time is the second doorway right here, skiing underneath the door. Now to do this, you kind of have to find the timing that works for you, but I have found that jumping and kind of landing on the black little square here and holding space and crouch W, that nets me the best result. So normally what you would be doing is you would be jumping over the top here, jump, then you would hold control, you know, and slowly go under the door. You could even start, you know, if you time it right, holding shift to get under the door earlier, but that doesn't really seem to actually speed you up in your kind of crouch position. So for me, even though you're only shaving off a very small amount of time, it definitely adds up. So I get up here and I jump and glide under the door to keep that speed. And again, what I'm doing is I'm actually jumping first so that I can start my my air boost and everything. And if you're coming downward, you're holding crouch, you'll actually hit the ground for a brief second, low enough that you can go under the door. That's your kind of skiing motion. Because you're crouched in contact with the floor, but using the thruster, you essentially have no friction and you can slide under the door. And because you're crouched, you've got that smaller hitbox that you need to actually get under the door. If I wasn't crouched, you know, doesn't mean anything. But because I'm crouched and I'm activating my thruster while I'm falling, going downward, go right under. So hopefully that's good enough explanation that you should recreate it for yourself. The timing is a little weird, but I tend to activate my boost when I jump on the actual box. Moving on from there, it's just kind of sprinting all the way down the hallway, getting to the next part, which is going to be the lift. And I'm only going to show this kind of once here because it's very hard to get back to the lift. I'd have to redeploy and come all the way back down the hallway. But what I do personally when I'm running down the hallway, right about the time that the lines on this arrow, these lines right here, go out of frame, that's about the time I like to start my jump and boost, so that instead of walking up to the lift and then going straight up, you can actually jump into the stream right under the kind of entrance there, so you don't clip the top, but you're starting the lift a little bit higher up. Once you're up in the lift, you see that it goes up pretty far, and halfway up this lift, the lighting starts to change from this kind of darker in the bottom of the tunnel to more of a lighter color from the lights above. What I do is when I see those lights change, I start to hold Shift W so that I start moving forward in the lift, just a kind of arc, so that when I hit the top, I'm coming out going forward toward the next doorway. I'll kind of throw that all together and show you what it looks like here. When I run up, arrow comes out of frame, I'm up, Shift W, boom. So I've come out of the lift. Instead of what you would normally kind of do is come up, it would drop you and then start running. Or maybe sometimes you run up. That's kind of more of what you want to do, is hold Shift W right at the very top of that jump so that you can get the most distance possible. And it saves time from you having to land and then run across. You can kind of land in the doorway, cut the corner immediately, you know, and run toward the point. Now, the point is kind of an interesting way for your timing. So, in a lot of games, a kind of point like this would be more of like a big circle in the room, and you'd want to step at the very crest of that circle if you're running in a straight line. So imagine if it was like a in this case like a half circle. I'd want to run to the very top of that half circle. That would be the closest distance. Now, what I have found, if you're ever playing like Infiltrator, for example, and you're messing around with the point, and say you're playing Infiltrator, you're cloaked, and you don't want people to know you're on the point. So you stand right at the very edge of the room, and then you slowly crouch walk into the room to start capping. Maybe somebody runs up and you walk out or something. But what I've found that in Planetside, a lot of the points are, rather than like a circle, like a radius from the point, the capture points are actually zones. Meaning that, so in this case, from about this line straight across to this line here, instead of it being a circle, it's really a straight line. So when you're talking about cutting the maximum amount of time possible, you know, the shortest distance from one point to another is a straight line. So I want to make the straightest line possible I can with this doorway. So you would kind of want to run right along here, just enough so that you don't clip the edge here. Just run straight to the point. So that's what I usually do. You'll see in my run, I come up and I land about here, cut, and I run straight to the actual point. not to the middle, but right along this little control panel here. So that's another little, I mean, still just a fraction of a second, but when you're talking about a run that's only, you know, a minute 40 seconds or so, every little bit kind of counts. So the next thing that's going to happen is, you're capturing the zone, and you'll see in the bottom right corner of the screen, you'll see the zone capturing, and after you capture it, you've got a certain amount of time that the progress is changing. This is a very kind of unique part to this run, is that now you've got like 20 seconds that you can actually customize your loadout. And during the run, in the actual tutorial, from here you would run all the way to the teleporter on the other side of the room, teleport up. But now that the point's captured, there's a new spawn point that you can redeploy at if you wanted to, or if you happen to die in the tutorial, you can redeploy to a new part. So really, you can save more time by redeploying at the new part than it would to run all the way to the teleporter. So what you can do in this time is change your loadout, which another benefit of the redeploy is that as soon as you redeploy, you've got a brand new loadout instead of what you were using before. Skirmisher jump jets, even though it's Skirmisher 5, I believe that ambusher jump jets are going to be the fastest way to cover distance in this run. So right now, my recommended loadout is changing my jump jet to ambusher jump jets 5. My suit, I like to use flight suit 4, mostly because ambusher jump jet's cooldown is reduced by 1 second. Again, only 1 second, but with such a short time in the run, every second kind of counts. And you can get in more jumps with 1 second cooldown. So, a lot of other runs like to use adrenaline pump for increased sprint speed, but from my testing, what I found is that having the 1 second, reduced cooldown on your ambusher jump jet can let you cover ground faster than if you were sprinting with adrenaline. So that's my finding personally with the kind of route I like to take. So then really none of the other stuff matters until you get down to your implants. Implants are very important for the run because they add a lot of customization to your movement and your kind of jet abilities and stuff like that. So kind of the general consensus on what implants work is going to be, so Athlete 5 is going to really increase your sprint ability, how fast you can sprint, and your cooldown and everything. So Athlete 5 is my first choice. Second choice is going to be Cat-like. And Cat-like reduces the, so your movement speed penalty for crouching, but you also gain an increased jumping height. And for the route I like to take using ambusher jump jets, that is very important for the very end, because there's a gate at the very end, or a shield wall, and with Cat-like you're able to jump over that shield wall with the ambusher jump jet. Otherwise, you're not able to make it over the wall with a normal jump unless you've got higher ground using ambusher jump jet. And again, if you want to talk about, right, you want to be in a straight line, just running straight toward that terminal as fast as you possibly can. And I have found that having Cat-like, I'm able to jump over the shield wall, get there faster. So that's why I think Cat-like is a very good choice for your second implant. And you don't spend a lot of time crouching, but we'll see in a minute why it is important to have that cooldown, or that reduced movement speed penalty for crouching. So anyway, you want to get kind of fast with your clits and be able to do everything in about 10 seconds to change all of these abilities. And right now, the fastest way we have found is using the Harasser with the Racer high-speed chassis performance upgrade. So with all that in mind, you want to, try to do that in 10 seconds so that while the point is capturing, you can, after you have flipped the point, redeploy and spawn at the next spawn tube as soon as possible. So in most runs, you'll be able to change everything in your loadout, and be ready to spawn at the next point before it's fully captured. That's great because you're not really losing any time there. You have time to change your loadout, and it's not like you're taking time to change your loadout. Just kind of worked into the run because you'd like to redeploy anyway, because it'll save you time running to the teleporter. Anyway, after all that, now we're respawning at the next point. So for me, what I've found that using ambush or jump jets against a low roof, something like this in the spawn tube, a lot of that upward momentum will actually be transferred forward, kind of shooting you across the room instead of up in like an arc. At the very beginning, as soon as I spawn, I like to hold W, crouch, and space so that I'm using my jump jet against that low ceiling to shoot into the doorway. What that looks like. Boom. Just like that. So now in about a second, I've come all the way out here from that spawn tube. I'll do it again. All I'm really doing here, and you see how high you jump with cat light too. So that kind of helps you get up to that ceiling. So I jump and hold crouch. The reason I'm holding crouch is so I don't hit my head on that second doorway there, because your hitbox is reduced when you're crouching. So I jump, crouch, and I let go of space just a little bit early, because otherwise you will end up hitting your head. But this way you're able to get the most distance moving at a very fast pace out of the door. So once you come out, really it's just a race to the jump pad, which will move you on to the next part of the run from here. So what I do from here, I like to run and wait. During this time you'll be on a cooldown for your ambush or jump jet, but using the route I take, I jump right about here at the top of the steps and use my jet again, and that'll get me all the way over to here from the very top of the steps, which using your jet is a lot faster than if you were sprinting, for example. So another thing that I'd like to talk about after that is going back to skiing. So when you're using the ambush or jump jets, you can ski across the ground crouched after you land. So normally I jump and I land. Really, I can do that out here where you can see with a little bit more space here. But I use my jump jet, then I land on the ground. You can see that you actually slide for just a little bit amount of time after you hit the ground. Now, if I'm sprinting and then I jump, when I land, if I'm sprinting again, sprint speed is slower than the speed that I'm traveling in the air. So if I want to preserve that momentum for just a little bit longer, I hold crouch when I land to slide across the ground, kind of skiing across the ground. Look what happens. Slide just a little bit further, keeping that about that same speed. I jump and I hold crouch. There we go, I'm sliding. Now, if I want to preserve that speed just a little bit longer after that, I jump at the end of my slide. Land. I jump to try to keep that momentum going as long as possible. Now, with cat-like, you spend even more time in the air. So now you're just shaving off fractions of a second while doing this run. So again, after I jump, I immediately start to hold crouch so that I slide across the ground when I land. Keep in mind, you want to hold W this whole time so that your momentum is traveling forward. I jump, holding W, land on the ground, and jump again. And that I found is a little bit faster than just sprinting the whole time. So now, just talking about from this portion from the spawn tube to the teleporter, all I'm really doing, okay, you spawn in. Remember, we're gonna hold space, W, and crouch. Shoot right out of that doorway. And even there, you see I slide just a little bit when I land. Now, I'm gonna be running to the next part here, and boost again. Slide, crouch, jump, stairs. Now I'm going up to the teleporter, or the jump pad. So I'll do this kind of at a real-time kind of pace, and you'll see how the cooldown, pay attention to the cooldown on the ambush or jump jets, and why one more second would actually cause harm to your run here. So from the start, I'm out, cool down, cool down, cool down until I jump. I'm able to hit that right before I hit the ground and just run straight to the jump pad. It's very nice. It works out at a very good and easy to recreate kind of speed. The jump pad is, in my opinion, probably the trickiest part of the entire run. So I won't get into too much detail because there are videos talking about strafing using jump jets with these jump pads in Planetside, but essentially when you're in the air you have what's called horizontal air braking. So what that kind of means is that when I'm jumping and going forward, after a while I'll start to kind of slow down in the air because of my jump jets. And if I'm moving faster than my maximum speed at my jump jet, then I'll actually slow down just like that. Even though I'm holding W and shift, I fall very, very short of the actual jump pad. That is due to horizontal air braking with the jump jet. So what I want to do is manipulate my jump using my jump jets so that I don't lose speed, but I can change trajectory when I'm going across this jump. How do you do that? Well, the weird thing about horizontal air braking is that it applies mostly when you're moving forward. So if I were to kind of manipulate my trajectory when I'm jumping, if I do that off at a 90-degree angle, well then I'm still moving side to side. Not much horizontal air braking, but forward and back I am losing speed. So when you're jumping in a straight line, well, I don't have speed forward and back. So really I'm not losing any speed. And as I'm moving forward and turning my mouse, well, that side to side momentum is being, transferred into an arc. So now I'm moving kind of at an angle, just like that. All that speed is going side to side, so I can curve my jump, which is great because that means, okay, now I can land at the vehicle terminal, the next part of the run. So kind of in short, what I'm doing is I'm jumping facing 90 degrees and then I'm going to use my jump jet, slowly arc my mouse to the right as I'm kind of approaching the terminal. This will curve my jump so that I land right at the terminal. And this is probably the hardest part of the run to be consistent about. But generally what I try to do is keep an eye on this rock right here. This is the rock you want to avoid when you're going to strafe, and I will show you. But what happens for me a lot of times is that I'll start to strafe and I'll either hit this rock or hit this tree when I'm coming around because you're coming downward on your way in. So I'll show you once so that you can kind of get a feel for it, but I'm going to jump, I'm keeping an eye on that rock, and then at the very end I'm going to use my jump jet. Now that wasn't a good one, but you see now I've landed a distance from where I would have landed. Instead of landing on the pad and running across to the terminal, now I can manipulate my jump so that I land closer to the actual terminal. So again, after I run up here, I run to the pad, I'm facing 90 degrees. I'm going to keep looking for that, strafe over to the side. And you kind of have to try this out for yourself, but keep in mind you're only holding W while you use your jump jet, and just kind of curving your trajectory by using W to keep your input moving forward, but your horizontal speed will be maintained from this jump jet, or from the jump pad I should say. Another thing that's I have found helpful, is that by pressing H you pull up the map. You've got a bigger map, so you can use that to kind of line yourself up as you're coming in. So if I'm looking just strictly at the map, I can turn and kind of rotate in toward that terminal. So you kind of have to play with it and find the perfect time for you that you want to turn at, but ideally you want to come just around the top of that rock and then coming into the terminal toward the end. So now moving on to the next part is the actual terminal. So there's kind of two ways to approach it. You've already customized your harasser, so all you've got to do now is spawn it in. And either you can press E on the terminal, click to spawn your harasser. What I like to do, again, just shaving off a fraction of a second, I'm going to press E, immediately use my index finger to press F3, or F2, excuse me, to click on my harasser as I'm moving my mouse over to spawn it. Really, that can all be done in one kind of smooth motion, just like that. So really, boom, I've just spawned my harasser with essentially one less click, which saves you a lot of time when you're shaving off so much fraction of a second. So now, this is really getting to the very end of the run. And it's, I'm talking a lot, but this whole run is very short. It's only a minute 40 just about. So, whenever you spawn in a vehicle in Planetside, to get you off of that pad, it likes to spawn you in going full throttle up until, a good, 20, 30 feet away from the actual terminal. So when you spawn in, you're going to be locked moving forward for a short amount of time. You want to keep holding W because, of course, you don't want to lose any speed while you're going forward. Then turn yourself in. Straight line from here all the way to the all the way to the shield at the very end of this long stretch of road here. So really all you're going to be doing is driving in as straight a line as possible all the way to that gate there. Now there's several different kind of approaches on using your turbo. You can either hold down turbo and get going as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, but then you've only got really one good turbo in on the whole stretch of road. Others have suggested tapping turbo, and doing this will allow you to continually have these short bursts of high speed, and really instead of one big boost of speed, you can get like 3 or 4 smaller boosts of speed, which over a longer period of time will actually keep you at a higher speed. So I like the approach of tapping turbo personally, but you can still kind of play around with it and see what works for you better. So anyway, spawn the vehicle in, it's locked moving forward. Okay, now I can move. I'm gonna tap, just keep kind of tapping that turbo, moving in a very straight line toward the vehicle shield gate. So you get to the gate. Okay, now you get there. You can't go through even with a gate shield disperser or whatever it is, so you're going to have to go over the gate. Normally in the tutorial you would be hacking the shield generator, swapping the gate, and then driving through. You can save much more time by actually jumping over the gate at the end. In previous attempts I've tried jumping by going up the hill, coming onto the rots, and then jumping off and moving around. Some people have been able to pull that off successfully, especially using the drifter jump jets, because you have a lot more manipulation in the air of your trajectory and everything, which can be very helpful in lining that jump up to the end. For me personally, as I talked about earlier, having cat-like, you can jump very high on that first jump, which mixed in with the ambusher jump jet allows you just barely make it over the top of that gate. And all things considered, this has gotten me my faster times is jumping over that gate just using cat-like and the ambusher jump jet. So it's kind of up to you what you can make work. I've found it kind of hard to be consistent with hitting these rots in such a way that you make it over the wall, keeping at a high speed, and that can screw you over when you're trying to get a faster time. So what I do personally is I drive up the road, straight line right up to this little incline right here. Right at the top, I jump out of my harasser, jump over the wall, and I'm in. All I've got left to do is make it straight for the terminal. One little thing to keep in mind is that input for the jump jet works differently if you're in the air versus on the ground when you activate it. So that means if you want more height, then by activating it on the ground, by just holding space, you'll jump, then go upward. Now, if I'm already in the air when I activate it, I don't get as high up, especially if I'm moving forward. Harder to make it over that gate. So you are moving faster horizontally, but you're not getting as much vertical off of that jump. So really all that matters here is that if you're going too fast in the harasser when you come up this incline, you'll catch just a little bit of air so that you'll already be in the air moving forward. You'll come up just a little bit short and you can clip that and slow you down. So when I'm coming up the road, I get right here to the very top of this little incline, jump out of the harasser, make it over the gate. I'm going to slide and jump again. I have just enough time for one more jump. Boom. And I'm at the terminal. That's the very end of your run right there. So that's really it for the run. You know, it's not very long. Really, it comes down to shaving off as much time as you can moving from one point to another. You want to save time with your jumps, menu interactions and stuff like that, and just cut every corner you possibly can. But it's more about a clean run than it is any. So that can be difficult because this game can be consistent at times. So it's up to you to kind of find what you can be consistent with and using that to your advantage. At least that's what I've found to help me the most. So other than that, I mean, there's really not much left to say. One last thing that I have found that I have not explored as much that can save you some time is that after you've created your character and you make it to the warp gate, well, if you choose not to actually warp anywhere, and so now I'm staying in this menu and I log out from here, from this menu, you can log back in the same different, the same character that you were on. Next thing you know, you're back in the virtual reality tutorial zone. But the only difference is now I've kept my ambusher jump jets. Now I'm not using skirmisher. This is where I see the biggest potential for increasing your time. I mean, look at that. If I could slide under that gate, I've gone much faster than I did with skirmisher. That could shave off up to 1 or 2 seconds. All the time that you spend running down this hallway, yeah, I mean, that should maybe even 3 seconds. Moving at that kind of space, yeah, I think it could. That's what I would encourage anyone else to kind of explore from there. Just keep in mind that if you log out, it seems like it does want to spawn you on a continent. And again, once you leave this tutorial, once you've gone somewhere else, you cannot get back to it. As far as I know, on the live server. So that's really it. That's my guide, if you will, on the Planetside 2 tutorial, any % speedrun. Yeah.